Dungeon Master's Guide. Welcome to Tabletop Gaming with Juice. Today, talking about building balanced encounters. Now, this has come up a lot. I've seen it in the Brigade, I've seen it in the one-shot group, I've seen it in the D&D groups. A lot of things that people have talked about is, did they get the CR levels correct or not? I don't see a problem with it, and here's why I'm going to say it. First of all, it depends on what rules you're allowing for building your characters, right? If you're allowing people to use feats, you're already making your players more powerful than how the monsters are set up, right? Another thing, if you're letting people do the 4d6, drop the lowest method, you're also making your characters a little bit stronger than how they are intended for the balance levels. So those two factors right there already make your players a little stronger than the CRs. Now, the CRs don't take into account certain things. They don't take into account if you have one player who's maxed out armor class of 18 at first level. Because most of the times we're seeing these issues at low levels. People say, my players walk through all the monsters. They also don't take into account if your characters are playing certain classes like Druid, where they can change into another animal, have all those hit points worth to soak up. It doesn't take into account Barbarian's Rage, with negating half the damage given, with resistance. So those are some things right off the bat that come to mind of why I think people are struggling understanding this. Now, if you have a group of players who don't have high armor class, so say your highest armor class in the group is a 15, and you also don't have abilities like changing into an animal, and you don't have the rage and things like that, and you're not allowing feats, you're going to see that your players are probably way too weak for most of the encounters set for that level. So you got to look at your characters, your player characters, and just kind of feel out where you think they are based on that. If you're new to it, it's okay. It'll come to you. It's always easier if you want to make an easy encounter and throw in a couple extra bad guys as reinforcements. So don't bombard them all at once. Maybe they're in the battle, they've wiped 4 of the 5 guys out. Reinforcements come in with 3 more guys, So now I have to fight a few more. That never hurts. In fact, that's probably the best way, if you're still new, to make your encounters a little bit difficult without making them too difficult. Start them weaker and build on them. You'll figure it out. Another thing to keep in mind is it's not just as plain as day as, oh, they're level 3, they should be facing these things that equate to a CR3. It doesn't work that way. And in fact, there are multipliers based on the amount of monsters. So first you look at your character's level. And this is based on the Dungeon Master Guide on page 82. You're going to look at your player character's level. Say they're 3rd level, right? There's an easy, medium, hard, and deadly level for all of it, and it's based on CR XP. And so that's your cumulative amount they can handle. So if you wanted to give them a deadly encounter, it's 400 total XP. Now, again, this isn't taken into account if your party is built for offense or defense. If your party is built for defense, you want to negate that, give them monsters that are built for offense, right? If both are built for defense, you're going to have a more difficult time. Or if they're both built for offense and not defense, the monsters and your heroes, again, it's going to be a very difficult encounter regardless. So you want a good balance there if you're trying to make a balanced encounter. So again, 400 would be deadly. Now, depending on how many monsters you're throwing at somebody, the encounter multipliers are like this. If you have 1 monster, the multiplier is 1. Simple as that. So if you're going for a CR, a deadly encounter for a 3rd level party, you want whatever CR to equal up to 400 XP, okay, as 1 monster. And this isn't for a whole adventure. This is for per encounter. That's another thing to keep in mind. So if you have an encounter in 1 room and an encounter 2 rooms later, that's 2 different encounters. You don't need to take the total from the first room and that, add it together and figure out the multiplier that way. You just, per encounter is what you determine your multipliers by. So if you have 2 monsters, that's 1.5 multiplier. 3 to 6 is times 2. 7 to 10 is 2.5. 11 to 14 is times 3. And 15 or more is times 4. So that's something to keep in mind. There's also your party size to keep in mind. It says that the guidelines assume that you have a party consisting of 3 to 5 adventurers. Now that's a huge range. I like to think of this as the guideline for if you have 3 adventurers. If you have 5 adventurers, I think you need to ramp it up a little bit by like 1. So everything up by 1. So for example, a multiplier of 1. So if you have 1 monster, it should probably be a 1.5 multiplier. You know, and the multiplier does not apply to how much XP your players get. It just applies to the difficulty threshold XP level, like the bank of XP. So it's all here on page 82 and 83. I think it goes up to 85 for different things. But it's just some stuff to keep in mind. When I create an encounter, I don't even use this. I create the encounter based on what I want, right? So I say, oh, I want them to face this many guys of this type, whatever. And then I'll go and do, sometimes, not all the time, I'll go back and figure out how difficult I made it. And based on that, that's where I'll say, well, that's going to be too easy. So maybe I'll throw a couple more guys in there that are weak. Or maybe I'll throw in a really good, a really tough main bad guy to make the difficulty a little bigger. You know, so most of the stuff where I'm looking at this is after I've already planned my encounters. So yeah, just something to keep in mind when you're trying to balance your encounters. That it's not something that that's going to come, like you're just going to automatically know when you first start playing. But it's something you'll learn really quickly within probably 10 sessions. So maybe 11 or 12 encounters total. But you need to look at what your player characters are. You know, you can't just have if you have a fighter who's wearing chainmail and a shield and he's sword and boarding it, he's going to be hard to hit no matter what you throw at him at low levels. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have a paladin, same thing. Cleric with a high armor class, same thing. They're going to be tough. Life clerics, for example. All of those things kind of make your party stronger if they have a high AC. Damage output at first level, facing first level type monsters, isn't that important. It's nice, but it's not important. That becomes important middle to high levels. First level, it's not as important. So, and it depends on what kind of stuff you're throwing at your people. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to reskin monsters. Maybe it's a little bit too tough for your party and you know it is. Maybe you want to tone its hit points down. And say that this isn't a full-grown, you know, whatever. You know, or maybe you want to ramp up something that's kind of weak, like a goblin or something. It's a solo goblin, but you've ramped up, you know, its stuff. If that's stuff you're interested in doing, page 274, the Dungeon Master Guide, Creating Quick Monster Stats, is a great place to start. It's right here. So look at that table, and whatever the CR would end up being is the average based on the offensive and defensive stats. So you take the two areas, so offensive and defensive, and they might be 2 different CRs, and from there you're like, okay, this is the CR, and you average it out. So again, it's not exact science, but like I said, it comes down to a lot of different things. So it comes down to if you're starting your party out right on top of the monsters every time. If you're starting your party out far away from the monsters, maybe your party has some really good 110-foot cantrips. That's like 2 rounds before the monsters even get to the players. You know, maybe you're not using difficult terrain. That's a way you can make things a little bit easier or harder for your party depending on what their strengths and weaknesses are. But strengths and weaknesses are imperative for you to know if you want to build balanced encounters. So ultimately, if balance is important to you, you need to know strengths and weaknesses of your party. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. I mean, there's not really anything else I can say. The CRs, I think, are pretty accurate. If you build your party based on the point buy system, and they don't have any like classes with extreme abilities like the barbarian or the druid. There's others like abilities and stuff. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. And if you're comparing the CRs based on Horde of the Dragon Queen and stuff, those were made before the whole CR system was created, so those aren't balanced encounters. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you found this helpful, informative, and useful. If you did, please like, comment, and share. And, you know, if you disagree, I have no problem with you disagreeing. Tell me in the comments below why you disagree. And maybe, you know, we can talk back and forth and figure out where the disagreement is from. Or maybe one of us will understand the other's perspective on it. I've been running 5th edition now since it came out. I run encounters. I am taking a little break until April. I run 2 at-home games. I run games online. I've got well over 250 hours in this edition. And I think I run pretty balanced encounters. I've had one player drop twice, and that was running Horde of the Dragon Queen. And it was an encounter that I didn't necessarily set up. It was based on the book. And it was also a little bit of tactics misuse a couple times. But again, that's another thing too. Tactics. Do your players use good tactics, poor tactics, no tactics? Maybe they just rush in and just cast spells and fight and have no game plan whatsoever. Maybe they're really smart about setting things up. Like, oh guys, maybe we should funnel them into this to use this spell or area of effect stuff. So there's all sorts of things to take into account. But anyways, I think you guys get the point. Figure out strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, so with that, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, please comment, share, like, all of that stuff. Tell your friends. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.